Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George,
My name is Tom.
And my name is Adam.
and with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com.
Looking
How we
fine,
going,
George. That camera setup you've got there is most pretty.
Thank you. Yes, I've got a Sony A6400 that's been sitting here sort of collecting dust for a little bit because I wanted to do more video content, and this is a good way to go about doing that in a way that looks good. But since the apocalypse happened, haven't really had time to think about that sort of stuff. So, but now it's making a resurgence as a webcam. So that's fun.
Yeah, it's very cool. I like noticing the difference between people's different webcams in meetings because, Adam's got this nice sort of the Matrix apocalypse kind of color grading going on there. Like he's in Fury Road. You've got this nice clear skin, well lit room, whilst mine shows how red my face is, just in all the blotchy goodness, and I hate it.
I can see
Fuck
vacuum
you,
cleaner
camera.
and there's a whole bunch of fun stuff in the background there, which makes it look really appealing. So
Turns
Oh,
out
yeah. Fun,
the
crazy
lighting
stuff.
guys on set in a film actually have stuff to do. And
the lighting guys have a
yeah.
real job. Yeah.
Oh,
You'll notice I've set up my background a little bit here. Tom, if you could describe what you see.
There's a cello, and then is that like a miniature cello? I see a stringy thing there. There's some flowers. There's a degree that I know isn't yours. It's a music stand. Okay, cool beans.
Music stand, beautiful bunch of flowers, Thor's hammer.
Hand grenade.
Oh, that was Thor's hammer. Yeah. Well, see, I've got a hoverboard. So, yeah, beat that.
That is actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I'm hiding our laundry behind me, so I'm not going to move.
Nice. The idea being, of course, if you're going to be on camera, you want a nice thing. Those flowers actually were given to us from our lovely friend of the show, Susie, in lieu of our wedding, which we were supposed to have the other day. So I thought it'd be good to show them off on the stream if possible.
Dodged a bullet there, didn't we? That was a joke.
I quite love my supposed to be wife. So
that's fair enough.
In that instance.
Marriage is just a construct anyway, I mean, we don't really need to be married. You can just say that you're married and then that means the same thing, right?
Yeah, there are so many comedies where that is literally the premise.
That's legally not correct. Please don't take that as legal advice. So basically the idea is we're going to be sort of stuck in this situation for weeks, months. I want to have like a setup that's basically like a game streamer setup, a podcast studio setup, a making videos setup, without having to move. Ideally, I don't ever want to move or use different things.
George's creative bones have been ticking since being unemployed. His
Do bones tick?
bones can tick a little
Okay.
bit.
Certainly not.
Creative bones have been.
Don't take anything I say as medical advice, but if your bones are ticking, maybe see a doctor.
I think it's probably symbiotic of arthritis.
Or a bomb disposal unit. You might have had bombs.
Yeah, that's true.
Very Hurt Locker-esque.
Is it? I need to watch that movie again.
There's literally a bomb inside someone. That's the spoiler of that movie, but sure.
Ah, right, gotcha.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought someone's bones exploded in that film, and I was like, I don't remember that bit at all.
No, but put a pencil in that because there's a new movie idea for your upcoming script, Tom.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, George, you say that we're going to be like this for the next several months and weeks, but I don't know whether the rest of Australia agrees with you on that one.
Yeah.
Because everyone seems to have stopped giving a shit, and they've gone shopping.
Yep.
For Mother's Day. Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
Just spreading around your bacteria and viral material in large communal areas. It's great.
So basically what happened is over the weekend, there's been a bunch of images that have surfaced from various shopping centres where people are not observing social distancing and are being in huge crowds in shopping centres, as you said, for Mother's Day, I did the right thing, of course, and got nothing from my mother. So I called her. I'm not a monster.
Oh yeah, I should call my mum. I haven't done that yet.
Oh, Tom, you naughty boy.
Oh boy.
You insensitive young man.
Greeting card holiday.
It's just one of those things where it's like they announced literally, what was it, Friday, after the cabinet meeting, all hands coag situation.
The National Cabinet.
National Cabinet, thank you. Where they basically said, here's a 3-phase plan. Look, you can tell it's a real plan. It's on paper and it's made of paper, and here it is. And look at it. There's multiple steps. So
here's some slides.
So it's real. We've got lots of slides. Chief Health Minister saying next slide. Someone needs to give him a clicker. But essentially what it meant is there's a phase sort of reintroduction, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and provided everything goes well, they want to sort of reopen the economy fully by July. But of course,
I think that
it is all contingent on there not being any huge outbreaks and, sort of like adherence to social distancing rules and all that sort of stuff. Because if we get 1,000 cases in the next 2 weeks, which seems like it might be the case from what's happened at in Western Sydney's shopping centres, then all of that kind of goes to shit. So
yeah, and it's interesting because even when they say economy open by July or whatever, because like, oh, how great does that sound? But really, like, they've clarified those comments a little bit, saying like, no, like what we mean by that is stage 3 of the easing back. Like, they don't mean everything's back to normal, because they've said like stage, because what is it? They're thinking of, they're allowing people to roll back to like gatherings of 10 or something on a state per state basis, whatever, and like certain businesses opening. And then the next from that is what is it? It's something like 50 or like 20 people or something like that. And then stage 3 is going back to the no more than 100 people in a room thing that we had like a month and a bit ago, right?
Millennia ago.
Yeah, so like to no more than 100 people. So, and then they've asked, so what happens after that? And they're like, well, we don't know yet. We can't model that yet because we need to see what happens from there. So I think there was a quote from the deputy, Deputy Chief Medical Officer, I can't remember his name.
Brendan, that's the deputy we're talking about.
Brendan Favola.
Yeah, but saying, oh God, God help us all. The Deputy Chief Medical Officer saying like, no, like really we should be looking at the stage 3 part, so no more than 100 people, etc., as the new normal until further notice. So it's like, even if everything goes perfectly well and in July we've reopened the economy, we're still at the 100 people in a room thing. So he's like, I don't think we're going to see like a packed MCG for the grand final in September, even if everything goes perfectly. So it's like, yeah, we won't be back to normal. The new normal will still be no concerts or no crowds like this kind of that we're seeing, right?
I think part of it is the messaging is people have got they've got news fatigue. So there's that.
We've earned an early mark, Adam. Early mark.
There's a difference between what the National Cabinet have announced. Their plan isn't actually a rule. It's just a guide for the states to implement at their own leisure, right?
Yeah, you're allowed to ease back X, Y, and Z, but you choose which ones you ease back,
And so the states have all got different rules going on at the moment. So there's complication.
The NT News has been spruiking every day for like the past 2 weeks, being like, guys, it's X amount of days until the pubs are open. That is all. 6 more sleeps till the pubs. And I'm like, well, I know Northern Territory was sort of one of the least hit because of how well they just shut everything down real quick. But yeah, it just means, pubs might be open in Darwin, but here in Melbourne, like, everyone still feels like they're cooped up. And you'll see a lot of Sam Newmans probably being like, well, they're allowed to go drink in the Northern Territory. Why can't I?
The thing is, like, even if the pub does open, they've got a limit as to how many people can be in the pub at any one time, right?
Precisely. So, you still got to do the social distancing when you're getting on the beers, as our socialist overlord Dan Andrews would say.
You still need to socially distance. You still need to have your hand washing. You still need to do all of these various things. You can't have more than X amount of people in the venue at a certain time, which means that for a lot of these venues, it's not going to be economically feasible for them to open. Like if you've got a restaurant that can seat 50 people and you're only allowed 10 in at any given time, and they need to have 4 square meters around them at all times, social distancing rules, all that sort of stuff. So in actuality, it's probably more like 10 people that you can actually have in there and still play by the rules. That's not going to be enough people. Like restaurants operate
stuff.
Yeah, they operate on razor thin margins. You're still going to need all the chefs, and you're going to need all the cleaners. You're going to have to reorder stock. That's the most important thing. If I work at a bar, can I afford to go and order $100,000 worth of stock? Because that needs to be gone really quickly. Otherwise, I'm fucking broke. Like, so if you're doing a quarter or a third of the amount of trade that you would normally do, that's not enough of a margin for you to run your business successfully, even sort of at half speed.
But I mean, the real story here is that the footy could be coming back. I mean, that's what I've all got to look forward to, guys. The footy,
is it?
Footy is coming, maybe.
The deadline for that's the end of this month, isn't it? I thought they put the footy on hold till May 31. But I don't know. Are we going to see? I was saying this the other night. It's like, are we going to see either the grand final not happen, which has that ever happened? Has the grand final ever not happened? Or is it going to be one of those, the grand finals in an empty MCG, and it's just going to be the most amazing photos we've ever seen?
No, they'll just get lots of like cardboard cutouts of people just being like,
oh my god, it'll be like a PlayStation 1 FIFA game of all that shitty, like, just get some cardboard cutouts that are just moving up and down, kind of, but like every third one is the same, and it looks really creepy.
That's fucking hilarious.
That would actually be. I'd
watch that grand final. I would watch it just for that.
Viewership is through the roof, mainly because no one can be there. But
yes, Well, Channel 7 or whoever has that exclusive rights or whatever to the grand final will be like, yes, good.
But all of this is sort of like putting the cart, several months before the horse. Because like it does presuppose you don't act like a fucking moron and go and swamp the shopping centers. Like, as you said, Adam, there's a lot of sort of miscommunication between the states. Like, for example, Northern Territory's got 6 people in it, 2 of whom are senators. Like, that's a different scenario to New South Wales or Victoria, which are the most populous states in the country. So,
and that even if everything goes perfectly well, like the social distancing restrictions we're currently seeing in shops still apply. Which I think
they
is
still apply, and you're not obeying them. So if we've already fallen down at the first hurdle, like what makes you think we're going to get to like stage 2 and stage 3? I predict 2 weeks from now, we're going to see a huge flurry of cases. Yeah. Everything goes absolutely turbo fucked and they go, oh, that was fucking stupid. Hey, we shouldn't have done that.
So the key thing is don't eat your coronavirus stockpile just yet.
No.
Hold on to that stockpile just a little bit longer.
Because I thought it was an interesting part of the article, Adam, that you sent us that talked about this, was that someone, and I couldn't tell if they were someone with any kind of point of authority or if it was just like, Kev on the street, but that they brought up that the social distancing like legislation, like, how many, square meters or whatever per person. So that would give you the cap of how many people are allowed in a spot, right? Because even though we have currently I think it's still, until they tell us otherwise, like, 2-person gatherings in public or whatever, that doesn't apply in shops per se. So you'd see like your Kmarts and stuff like that still being allowed to operate, but they have to have social distancing guidelines. So it's kind of like that the 2-person thing applies to us as the public, but the 100-person kind of applies to a business, right? But that's not the point. But the extra point that they have there is that they say, yeah, sure. So all the shops have their social distancing guidelines, if they're doing the right thing. Like they might have bouncers on the door counting the amount of people going in, like, they've got markers on the ground or like cashless, etc. But it was, and from all the photos, it's the actual shopping centre-y part outside all those shops, because there's no rules applied to that. Like that's what I think this Kev on the street said. So I guess take his legislative word with a grain of salt. I'm going to look up who said it, but I thought that was an interesting point.
I don't know about the legislative aspect of it, but certainly in practice, that's what's happening, right? You might have stores that are obeying, say you've got a shopping centre, you've got Chadstone or something like that. Maybe all of the individual shops inside Chadstone are behaving according to the rules and they're being really, really careful with how they go about doing things. But you're still in a centre which could conceivably have hundreds, thousands of people coursing through it at any given time,
Yeah.
walking, using the same escalators,
Bathrooms.
touching the same lift buttons, bathrooms
Yep.
would be a massive vector for disease. Like, because everyone's touching everything. That's where all the transmission actually happens, is in the center, and maybe like changing hands money with the cashiers in the shops. That's about it. So the real problem is the centers need to step up and actually have a plan and have some management in place for these sorts of things. And the fact that a lot of these places don't seem to be forthcoming with that kind of that sort of planning suggests to me that we've got a really long fucking way to go before we can actually safely open up the economy again. Like the fact that Westfield and, you know, like what's the place that owns Chadstone, Veracity or whatever.
I can't remember.
Whatever the name of the company is. The fact that they don't have like really strict guidelines around all this sort of shit says to me that like they've completely dropped the ball. Like this is the one thing that you needed to, when we went into lockdown, the only thing you should have been working on this entire fucking time would be, okay, when we do open up, let's model some ways of how that looks, what the planning is, what are the measures we're going to put in place in our centers to make sure we can open up as soon as possible so retailers can start trading again and not starve to death. Like that's the only thing they should have been working on, and they haven't done fucking anything.
George. Listen, they've put some extra hand sanitizer out, so...
Oh, well, forgive me. Sorry. Unreserved apologies.
It's funny because people, as we said, in the shops, they're, you know, letting 5 people in at a time or whatever it is in terms of how much space they've got. But then when they're lining up outside, everyone's crammed in next to each other.
Yeah, it's
if
the
you're
Centrelink
in the
problem,
center
right?
and it's the club, it doesn't fucking make a difference that you're staggered people going through to Smiggle. Like it doesn't matter. It's already happened by then.
Great. So yeah,
Right.
it'll be interesting to
good.
see where we're at. Give it a week. This time next week, let's have a look at the numbers and we'll say whether we were wrong or right, or maybe somewhere in the middle. And cross our fingers.
I just wish that it wasn't all or nothing. It seems like the Australian public is either shit scared out of their mind morons, panic buying toilet paper, and, you know, like hosing people down with disinfectant like it's, you know, the fucking Ellis Island or something, or they're just like chilling out at Woolies. And it's like we have to have some gradation of things in between here. You can't go, okay, it's over, let's behave like it's normal times now, because it's not normal. This is the part that actually counts, is like we've done all this good work with the lockdown in the last, you know, 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks. Now we need to be smart about how we open everything up. Otherwise, it's going to completely undo everything that we've worked to, everything that we've done up until this point.
Yeah.
And I don't know that it's really a situation where the government's received health advice that it's the best thing to do to start opening things up, or it's an LNP government and they've just received enough pressure from big business that they go, okay, well, it looks like the worst of it's over. Let's get the economy going again, because that's the thing they're really concerned about. That's what it seems like to me.
Could be column A or a bit of column A and B, I suppose. But I guess the really disheartening news is, you know, that you see it all over the place. Like I know, Adam, you say there's like, actually this was a result of news fatigue, of how everyone was reporting the growth factor number, because everyone was like, I know you're all sick of seeing every single headline about every single take regarding coronavirus that there ever fucking has been. So if you just want to pay attention to one thing, it's the growth number. And the growth factor number, like if it's above 1, that's bad. And that's all they tell you. They're like, look, above 1, bad. And for most of, I think, April and to the end of April and the start of March, we had it below 1. It was like 0.8 something. It's like, that's good. That means we're getting a handle on it. It's now 1.06.
Just to explain what that growth factor means, it's like for every one person, how many other people are infected with the disease. So if it's less than 1, if one person is passing it on to fewer than 1 people, basically within a certain amount of time, the disease gets stopped in its tracks. Whereas if people are passing it on to at least one person, 1 and a bit, then that means you start getting an exponential curve.
Yes, so it's again. Like they were talking about all the good work. That's actually just like a really simple to understand number system showing that good work in effect, but it's now coming back up again. So it's like, I don't know. Can't people just sort of look at it like that, in the sense of, we were doing well, oh, now we're not doing well again, better start doing weller again?
I also wonder how much of this is to do with movements that have started overseas, particularly places like the United States, where
gun-toting lunatics storm.
Well, the calls for
political
reopening the economy have become a standard place, and that's a rational argument to give in the face of a public health crisis.
The problem is that I don't think we've really got an appreciation for the cost that entails. People go, I just want things to go back to normal. But as you said, Tom, they're not going to go back to normal. They're going to go back to something closer to normal than what they have been in the past, but it's going to be a new normal. The fact is, you can't have... You are placing a value on lives of people. If we open things up, even just incrementally, even if it's done in such a way as to allow our health system to cope and flatten the curve and all that, what you are saying is we want to open the economy and it will cost people their lives. And that is a price, depending on the amount of lives and depending on how much economy is restored. As a result, that is a price that we're willing to pay. So I don't think people really grasp that. It's not that it's safe to go out. It's that
the risks are worth the benefit.
We expect a tolerable amount of death to happen in order for things for most of us to go about living our lives as we did before.
And in the United States, that figures like 100 to 200,000 people for fun, even.
Yes. Yeah. Well, which is nuts, because look, and that's where kind of the growth factor scale can skew things a little bit, because I just looked at it then, and so we're at 1.06, so that's bad for growth factor, but the US is at 0.99, so they're in the green just. But you look at how many cases that is, and it's like Australia 26 cases per day, the US 26,000, but their number's good.
It also depends on a bunch of different factors, like the rate of testing, like how many people are getting tested, how often, right? If you're getting really advanced testing where multiple people, hundreds of thousands are being tested per day, and you're hitting up the same people multiple times potentially if they're in higher risk situations, like obviously what looks like the growth factor is going to be inflated because you're catching more cases. You're aware of what's actually out there. So obviously the more testing happens, the higher that number is going to look as well. So it can be a little bit misleading. Something I did want to point out about the Prime Minister's press conference yesterday, I'm not sure if you guys were able to catch it, but it's not super important, but they were talking, a couple of the questions were about JobKeeper and what is the state of so basically, for those who don't know, JobKeeper was basically a wage subsidy that the government has started paying out to businesses in order to keep coronavirus affected businesses from releasing their employees from their employment. So one of the questions was, will you guarantee this supplement for 6 months? Because if you're saying like, oh, things are going to get better and we're going to start opening up the economy again, are you going to withdraw the subsidy out from under people without saying anything? And the really scary thing to me, as someone who hopefully should be on JobKeeper when it comes through, is that they basically refuse to guarantee it. Even though it was put in the legislation that it'd be good for 6 months until September, they basically refuse to guarantee it. So it's this really weird dichotomy where the Prime Minister's up on stage, like saying, yeah, like you said, Tom, Australians have got an early mark. We've done such a good job, sitting there with his shit-eating grin, talking about, patting themselves on the back for how good of a job that they've done. Meanwhile, JobKeeper payments for most businesses haven't even fucking gone out yet. Like, no one's even received the first wave of this money. And they're saying that they might cut it off early. Like, it just seems like a complete fucking...
It feels like they're just going to give out a massive couple of lump sums and then just like turn off the tap, basically.
Yeah, we'll do it for a couple of months, and then our mates in big business will say, oh, we're good. So then you can shut it off for everyone else. And that it just seems like horrendously... They just like announcing stuff. This government is a wage subsidy, by the way, which they didn't even want to implement. They refused. They made statements saying they were refusing to implement it. The unions and the lefties basically pressured them into it, forced them into it. They go, how good are we? We've got a wage subsidy. First class, we did it. Pat themselves on the back, haven't even sent out the money yet, and then they're already talking about winding it up. Like, it seems so fucking horrendously rich from the LNP to sit there with their shit-eating grins talking about what a good job that they were forced to do against their will. Yeah. And then they're going to wind the program up before it even starts. Like, it's such a joke.
History is written by the victor, George.
100%. And I think, honestly, I think they'll win another term off the back of this.
Probably. Everyone just forgets the bushfires ever happened, but that's fine.
100%. Yeah. In any other year, the bushfires would have been like a real point of contention at the next election. But this is like a huge existential threat. And people will go, well, I survived, and that's because of the shrewd economic management of the LNP. And so I reckon they'll get another term off the back of this, which I can't believe I'm saying. I was so sure last time around after the bushfires. I was like, there's no fucking possible way that they could fucking forget this. But
man, well, that means in however many years, can't wait to read ScoMo's tell-all being like, oh, and that pandemic, oh boy, saved my bacon. Yeah.
Real relief, all those hundreds of thousands and millions of people died across the globe. That could have been a real pot of hot water for me. So
yeah,
nothing like a crisis
to
put out the fire started by a crisis.
That's what Donald Trump does. He just ambles from crisis to crisis, hoping the previous crisis is the subsequent crisis is attention catching enough to completely erase your memory of the previous one. Yeah. That's what he's done. Fun. That'll segue us nicely into our next story. The Justice Department has dropped its case against Michael Flynn. Now, Michael Flynn...
yeah, remember him?
You might remember was Donald Trump's national security advisor.
For 2 seconds.
Nice guy.
Yeah, for a hot minute. The guy who looks like that eagle Muppet from the Muppets, that's him. He was essentially... So in the FBI investigation into the Russian involvement in the 2016 American election, basically Michael Flynn got caught out in a lie several times, lying about his contacts with Sergei Kislyak, I think is the pronunciation there, about his contacts with him, and sort of he lied about that to Mike Pence. He lied about it to the FBI, about the content of those meetings and exactly what that involved. After the fact, he was then forced to declare himself declare himself not as a foreign operative, as someone with a registered foreign interest or something like that, and then had to step down. And then a month later, the Trump administration decided, oh yeah, that's probably no good. Well, I suppose we'll fire him. And so he pled guilty to those charges, not once, not twice, but several times, and then got a new set of lawyers about a year ago, and they started mounting a very aggressive defense on his behalf. And now...
How do you defend someone who pleads guilty?
Exactly right, Adam. How do you go about doing that? That's an excellent question. You say, I'm not corrupt. The whole goddamn system's corrupt.
Yeah,
but basically, they said even though he lied and lied to Congress about it and subsequently, did commit crimes and admitted to them, that they weren't crimes because the investigation was on a shaky pretense. The original FBI investigation that brought all this about was initially started on a false pretense. They argue, the Republicans. And so therefore it's fruit of the poison tree. Anything that comes forth as a result of that needs to be dismissed. So yes, he lied. And yes, there's evidence of it. And yes, he admitted it, but they shouldn't have been investigating anyway. So it's not a lie.
The justice
Trump
wasn't,
2020.
Justice wasn't done by the book, as it were, I think is probably the argument there.
It's just absurd. It's just another point in the sheer corruption of William Barr. Right? Like the Attorney General that is just so far up Trump's ass. Like, it's just absurd.
Are we talking like a fist, Tom, or kind of more like elbow deep? Like, what's
I reckon he's gone well beyond elbow deep. He's probably come out his mouth again and is able to reach around for another go. I think is just how far up Trump's ass he is at this point.
Yeah, I was going to say ankles deep, but that's a much more vivid image that you painted there, Tom. Thank you.
You're welcome. But yeah, I guess it's just such a. I was thinking about this yesterday. That it's just fascinating to see. Well, fascinating, terrifying, and just outright disgusting to see what just decades of slowly getting into power and then keeping in power some just incredibly corrupt people that we're now getting to the point where they're not even hiding it anymore.
Like, this is legitimately this questions rule of law in a democracy. Like, some people can commit crimes, and because they're the president's mate, they don't have to pay for those crimes. Like, that's literally what's happening right now.
Yeah, it's almost like the president's a king.
No, they wouldn't. America would never have a king. America would never.
Love kings. They just, they had a personal beef with King George. They wanted their own king.
Yeah.
Is that how that worked?
I think so. Totally. Pretty sure. I read I saw Hamilton. I listened to Hamilton. I didn't see it.
You read? Listen.
I listened to it on Spotify.
Didn't even buy the album. Jeez.
No, fuck him.
It feels like they just sort of went, "Oh, it's too hard."
Too hard? He pleaded guilty several times.
I don't know.
So I guess now, it's too hard for me to do this in a non-corrupt way and also not have the orange lunatic yell at me.
Bill Barr is going to go down as one of history's great patsies.
He's history's
like the name Bill Barr. The name William Barr is going to become synonymous with it's like being Iago or something in The Lion King. Like, that's the level of
Iago and the Lion King. Is that how that works?
Iago
from Aladdin.
You even didn't remember who Iago was correctly in your analogy of someone going down in history being memorable.
Iago in Aladdin, which was the one in The Lion King.
You mean
Scar? It was the same guy as the parrot.
No,
I mean Zazu.
Zazu was a good guy.
Yeah, Zazu was a great. Well, I mean, I guess he was a bit maybe overbearing onto. There's probably some kind of little analogy you could do of Simba's mental state and recklessness being as a result of maybe a very imposing, semi-absent father, and then a very high-strung news spouting toucan. He was a toucan, wasn't he?
I got the name right. Okay,
toucan.
Just give me a break.
You got Iago.
It was Iago.
Right?
I was right. Iago was right.
Iago
in that thing that we all remember.
Is there an Iago in Hamlet, or is that Othello that I'm thinking of?
Is it Othello?
Othello.
Iago is the bad guy in Othello. Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking you're.
That's where I thought you were going, and then you said The Lion King, and I went, huh?
Also Iago, famous bad guy from Shakespearean literature. So there.
Oh.
Dick.
Smarts. Look, guys, it could be worse. The
world.
It could be. Well, we could be like, democracy could devolve into a game of literal musical chairs, like it did in Hong Kong this week. So Hong Kong, obviously, lots of protests prior to the whole virus thing happening between pro-China, pro-democracy. What does it mean? I don't know if they ever resolved it in the end. According to this fight, perhaps not. But Hong Kong's Legislative Council, they have this chair, basically, right? The Speaker of the House, effectively. And they have to try and elect a chairperson. But they couldn't do it. So after several weeks or whatever of trying to work out who's going to sit in this chair, they literally walked into Parliament, or whatever their equivalent of it is, and it was just whoever could sit on the chair first was somehow imbued with that power. And so it just got down to a bunch of grown men wearing masks because we've got to be careful about social distancing, trying to sit on each other and pull each other off the chair to try and to see who would get the role.
Just so you know, the mask doesn't work if you're punching each other up. It doesn't work if you're grabbing each other and touching each other and hitting each other in the face. The mask is not actually really going to help you at all in that situation, just so you know.
And you can,
or anyone else.
You can view there's footage on YouTube and on various internet sites about it, but it just becomes this absolute farce. And they ended up just in a massive brawl almost.
Cool.
I mean, it could always be worse. Do you know what I mean? Like, we could that could be democracy.
No, you know what?
At
I
least
think that'd
Clapper,
be an
Sparrow,
improvement.
Jiggly, and sorry.
Well, I think that could be an improvement on certain situations happening at the moment. Like, I mean, if I just saw our parliament like drop all the pretense and just have a biff inside the House of Reps, yeah, you know what? Fair play.
I think I could really enjoy seeing, seeing one of the senior members of parliament, sort of bounce Josh Frydenberg's head off the big mace, or or off the speaker's chair. That'd be fun. See ScoMo getting the shit kicked out of him by by Penny Wong. I reckon she'd be getting a fight.
Yeah, why not?
I don't know how long Albo would last. He doesn't look particularly fit.
He's got the weight though. That's the thing. He hasn't got the strength. Like, he can't fight good, but he's definitely got a good 20 pounds on I don't know, Matthias Cormann or someone.
Good.
Just sit on him.
Just sit on him. Yeah, indeed.
Just make it a sumo.
It becomes a sitting protest.
The whole thing is that the woman who ended up getting the chair was the incumbent, who's pro-China, and the whole thing is obviously a farce. Even though the Democrats make up the majority in Hong Kong, somehow their voice is not recognized really at all, and that's because you don't live really in a democracy. You live in a Chinese client state. I don't know what I'd do if I lived in Hong Kong. I think I'd just leave.
Well, you don't always have that option, do you? Depending on visas and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd make every effort to leave, because it's going to become China at some point. Like, that's not really debatable.
2040. What was the date?
But whatever it is, it's a couple of decades into the future. But like, the whole point is that you don't, like, China is making an effort to integrate it much, much earlier than that. And I don't want to be on the opposing side of anything China wants to do at any point.
It's
like,
funny,
you're not going to win that fight.
Like, there was another article that came out this week where China are actually, the amount of foreign journalists they're expelling at any one time.
They expelled
increased.
all. Yeah, I listened to a guy who is a journalist for the New York Times. They did a podcast about it a couple of weeks ago, basically saying, like, China's been his home for the last 15 years. That's where he's been reporting from. He has an apartment. Like, he lives his life in China as a reporter for the New York Times, and they just unceremoniously tossed him out.
Yeah, that's all to do with criticism and stuff around the virus. But it doesn't bode well for. I mean, I don't know. China try to say that they're open and they've got nothing to hide, but then they go and do stuff like that where they just ostensibly try to hide whatever the reporters are trying to report on. Which,
the notion that China is anything short of a complete totalitarian, authoritarian autocracy is a fucking joke. They're just communists with a capitalist hat on. Like, it really is a totalitarian regime. There's no two ways about it. You can't argue anything other than that.
Infinite G.
Infinite G. Exactly
Infinite
right.
G. Well, I mean, you could also be in Venezuela, which has got another kind of dictatorship.
Oh yeah, they're having a great time.
Yeah. So I came across this story from The Guardian, and I couldn't believe that, one, I hadn't heard about it, and secondly, that it actually happened. It's like,
yeah, I only saw this morning as well. I don't know where, just someone at The Guardian was like, hey, people need to know about this. Did we retweet this one again, please? Can we get this one out there? Because I don't think enough people fucking paid attention to this shit.
It's actually like, it's the next Netflix drama comedy, I reckon, about international politics.
I love that you think of it as like a drama comedy. I was thinking of it more like a Coen Brothers, like, comedy of errors sort of thing, like Burn After Reading, where it's just like a bunch of morons doing their own Secret Service thing and then just end up getting a bunch of people killed because of malfeasance and incompetence.
So did you both have a chance to read the story yet or not?
Quick skim, but you know what? Give us the rundown, Adam.
Well, as we know, in Venezuela, the president that's been in power for a while is Nicolas Maduro. They had an election a while ago, which
an election where he was dutifully elected in a safe and fair election.
Which has been widely reported as being rigged. And
no, what? What are you talking about?
The opposition leader, who's called Guaido, is his last name. I think I pronounced that correctly.
Juan Guaido.
Juan Guaido. He's been recognised as the leader of Venezuela by a lot of other countries. And it's been sort of, there was a point there where with all the international pressure, we thought, maybe Maduro would step down. He didn't. So now they're looking at alternative measures to perhaps remove Maduro from power. And one of them is to stage a good old-fashioned coup. Who doesn't love a coup, guys?
The Bay of Pigs, excellent coup. That worked out for the best for everyone, as I recall.
And it did splendidly.
Lots of coups. America's great at coups. Good at them. Keep pulling them off seamlessly all the time.
Good coup recipes. So basically, Guaido had basically employed this guy called Rendon to kind of look for ways of obtaining power. And they set up a committee and that kind of thing.
A little coup committee.
A commission, I think it was called.
A coup
commission. I hate that our brains went to the exact same place at the same time. Ridiculous.
And obviously, they're looking at all options, right? And a lot of people were bidding for it, and they were saying, this is going to cost us 30 mil. It'll cost you 30 mil, we could do it, but we need these provisions. And there was this little old US firm called Silvercorp, which happened to be the lowest bidder. And that's headed up by this guy called Goodrow, I think is how it's pronounced, or something like that, who's a mercenary, ex-Green Beret, with a couple of his mates from the United States. And they said, look, we can do it with some future oil options and $1.5 million basically.
Give us some equity.
Anyway, so this conversation sort of started up, and basically they were introduced by way of a former general in the Venezuelan military. It's always sort of power brokers that have sort of been, I guess, that started off the initial conversation between the two sort of camps, Silvercorp and the guys working for Guaido.
Now, the general in my version of this would be played by J.K. Simmons, obviously, of Whiplash fame.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. I'm already casting the movie in my head as we go through this, just so you know.
And anyway, so a lot of stuff happened. There was lots of conversations. They ended up meeting. They ended up having a meeting and a high-profile meeting where they ostensibly signed a contract, right? So the representatives of Guaido had a contract with Silvercorp to basically stage this invasion. He touted that he had 800 people ready to invade Venezuela. Okay.
It just reminds me of that line in The Wire with Idris Elba where he goes, it says the N-word. Motherfucker, is you taking notes on a criminal conspiracy? What are you doing? You don't take notes. You don't sign contracts. This is all meant to be done in paper bags and park benches. What are you doing? We got a contract here where it says, I'm going to illegally overthrow this guy and install you in power. Yeah, a couple of people will get murdered. And if you could just sign on the dotted line here.
But in the preparation for all this, things started to go south. Right, so
what? No, it seems seamless so far.
Yeah.
So depending on who you talk to, a number of different things happened. So if you listen to Rendon, Juan Jose Rendon, basically Goudreau, who was the mercenary from the United States, was while he'd said we'd do it, he was pretty light on the details. And
you're telling me the cheapest mercenary didn't have a plan? That's crazy,
That's
Adam.
who
I don't see
hired
how.
to stage my coup, the guy who has the fewest details.
And the cheapest plan. That's what you want, by the way. You want the cheapest mercenary to make sure you get the job done.
Yeah.
Fuck's sake.
And so Rendon was like, well, I don't really trust, with what you're doing, and you're becoming increasingly more erratic, and you're talking to people, so that they basically...
They were talking with, mates of the guys that they're trying to...
Yeah.
Organizations that are affiliated with allies of the government in Venezuela, and they're, having discussions openly and just, talking about it. The Associated Press did a long-form story on this whole plot 2 days before the invasion, and they still tried to go through with it.
Yeah. So we'll get to that. You probably ruined the punchline a bit there, but if you listen to Goudreau, his complaint was that, well, I'm not going to give you more information because I'm not getting paid, right? So all this money that you'd promised me, it never came through, and they eventually rocked up at Rendon's apartment and were like, you need to give us the money, and the guy's like, no, give me some fucking details, or give me some assurances. Anyway, so basically Guaido's associates, so including Rendon and a few others, they just pulled out. They're like, nah.
Yeah, because it's fucking crazy, because it's fucking insane.
But the best part about it is the reason why they still went through with it was because the US government had put a reward up for $15 million to bring in Maduro for drug trafficking charges. So they thought, well, I guess even though we haven't got the backing of the opposition here in Venezuela, I guess we could still go through with it because there's $15 million in it for us. How hard could it be to kidnap a president and extract him out of Venezuela? They had, under the initial contract, they had 45 days to train up their little small army. And as you said, George, they talked to so many people that 2 days before it was meant to go down, the Associated Press...
Everyone knew. Everyone knew about it.
Even
100% of the people involved knew about it.
Even the guy that initially had set up the contact, Alcara, this former general, he was indicted and had to go into the Venezuelan police. And he was even said, I've got all this knowledge about it. He was obviously spilling the beans. And they still went ahead with it. So there were a couple of US mercenaries and a couple of other 100 guys that were basically trying to infiltrate into the Venezuelan capital, I guess, via fishing boat. And of course, everyone knew it was happening, so they just arrested everyone. A couple of people died. There was a shootout.
Gunned them down. 8 people died.
2 US mercenaries were captured. And then when they were questioning them, even they were kind of vague on the details of well, what do you want to do? Oh, we were just going to rock up to the palace and secure it. And then
roll up, kidnap the president, go to an airfield, get him out,
Then the airfield they were going to...
Venezuela stuff.
The airfield they were going to use was the most heavily guarded military airport in the capital of Venezuela. And so the other mercenary, his job was meant to be just rustle up some planes, just get some planes and some pilots, and then we'll just, fly back to the US.
Vague on the details. Just get some planes and some pilots. How do you suggest I do that? Just do it.
It's literally the plot to a John Wick movie. It's we're just gonna get in there. I'm just gonna kill fucking 80 dudes, and I'm gonna take him out. I'm gonna hop in my Mustang and get out. There was no plan. There was no, but also even if there was a plan, you can't just take over a country.
Can't invade a country with 80 guys.
Yeah, you can't just take over a country being light on the details with the cheapest dudes you've got who say they've got 800 men. How many do they actually end up with?
No one really knows the exact number. The best part about it was that after everyone had been arrested, they then did a press conference. And he's like, we've activated this American guy's we've activated our agents in the north, east, and west of the country, standing next to some former army captain. And like, it was already over. Like, the whole thing had already been, I don't know whether they were hoping for a popular uprising maybe or what, but
Whenever you're planning, here's a note. CIA, dear CIA, hi, it's George. You're probably aware of me. There's any time that your plan relies on a civilian uprising, the people like just falling in love with democracy and blue jeans and rising up and being thankful to the invaders, you should know that is a terrible plan. It has literally never worked for you. It is never going to work. And you should. I don't know how many times the U.S. government needs to learn this lesson. Where it's anyway.
It's just
Was the U.S. government sort of involved? Because that's the allegation from Venezuela, is that the U.S. was sort of pulling the strings behind this whole thing.
I mean, who knows? So
it doesn't seem like it seems too like Mike Pompeo basically made a joke out of it. He's like, if we were behind this, it would have worked out better. Like we wouldn't have been so fucking stupid.
The US definitely the government provided the motive, right? I don't know if they would have gone through with the operation if that reward hadn't been on the table.
Right.
It's funny because even former colleagues, former soldiers that served with Goudreau, who still he's fine, by the way. Like, he's not arrested.
What?
He's not arrested.
You invaded Venezuela.
He's off. I don't know where he is, but he wasn't one of the ones that were arrested. It was his patsies that got arrested. Notable people that have worked with him, even one of former employee of Silvercorp, one of the guys who helped found it, was like, this guy is a loose unit. Like, he just has unrealistic ideas that don't really come off. He just thinks, she'll be right. It's almost like the whole thing had been planned out by an Australian. But whether or not the CIA actually had any direct involvement, we don't know. They wouldn't tell you, obviously, if they did.
Yeah, it is one of those things where it's like sometimes, like Donald Trump himself, sometimes it just pays to back yourself. You too could launch a failed coup against the Venezuelan government one day if only you really believed in yourself. That's how Trump got to be president. He just fucking backed himself.
And you'll get away with it.
And you get away with it.
Well, the sad part about
consequences.
The sad part about all this is that Guaido, his reputation's just been shot through the floor because they've got a document which has got a signature on it, and he's got, that's not my signature. No, it's not mine. But all accounts from all the witnesses say that while he wasn't directly negotiating anyone's behalf, the whole thing
he was aware of the process.
The whole reason why they even got him involved in the first place was because he put effectively a tender out for it. There was a commission, a Coupmmittee, as we said,
a bidding process for the Coupmmittee. Yeah, it does tend to, as a rule, it does tend to undermine your claim to be the democratically elected, president, if you then try and initiate a coup in order to become the president. It does undermine your credibility somewhat, as a rule. Not a great look.
But this all happened late last year, and only I think the actual thing went down a couple of days ago, as far as I'm aware. So it's just a sort of thing that slipped through, and no one's been talking about it. It's just crazy.
Well, there's a pandemic going on, Adam. I think we've got stuff on our plates.
I've got places to be, in my house.
Yeah.
The living room, the fridge,
Zoom meetings to
the bedroom,
attend and turn my camera off during,
etc.
Should we talk about Elon Musk?
I mean,
this clusterfuck of a person.
Elon Musk he's dropped pretty far in my estimation in the last couple of years. I have to say, 5 years ago, Elon Musk was the guy whose biography I would read. Now, today, Elon Musk, I was just like, you called the diver a pedo. You've tweeted away billions of dollars worth of stock value, which came back. You also named your kid after an AR-15 or whatever that whole fucking debacle was.
It was a plane, wasn't it?
Whatever it was. You're talking about, liberating America in the midst of a pandemic. I'm not sure I'm a big fan of the old Elon Musk anymore. I have to say, it's wearing a bit thin.
He's a bit erratic, isn't he?
A
Just a
bit?
tad.
I love SpaceX. Like SpaceX and Tesla are like two companies that I'm just like, fuck, they're going to change the world, you know.
Amazing.
And then he just comes out and says stuff, and you're like, oh, you forgot that you're crazy.
Someone needs to take away his thumbs. Him and Donald Trump need to have their thumbs amputated, I think, because that way they can't tweet dumb shit on their phones.
I think they did try to sort of handicap him a bit with Tesla. Like they removed him from a certain position he was in.
Isn't he no longer like head of the board or something?
I think he was CEO, but they moved him from CEO to being maybe on the board. I can't remember. But anyway.
The point is, he tweeted that the Tesla stock was overpriced and it plummeted about 10%. Yeah, just completely wiped out billions of dollars worth of value. Now it's Tesla. So a bunch of people were like, oh, Tesla's cheap. I'm going to pick up some Tesla. Now it's worth more than it was before. But like, as you have a fiduciary responsibility not to shit talk your own company. I think, as a rule.
Yeah. It's kind of like
he got some
too high, TBH.
There was a an SEC like a civil suit that was brought against him for basically saying that he was going to privatize the company on Twitter, which made the stock price shoot up as well. When he knew perfectly well that wasn't a thing that he should have known that wasn't a thing that you could really do once a company's gone public like that.
He reminds me, I said this in the Facebook chat, but he reminds me of me posting on Facebook in second year uni. Just
except you're not a genius billionaire. So I don't know. What is that? He just goes full
unfiltered. There's no filter
on Twitter. Right? Yeah.
But look, he's got billions and billions of dollars, so I guess he can do what he wants.
It might be all the drugs he does with Joe Rogan.
It's one time. Apparently, he's not a pot smoker. That's not a thing that he normally does because he's too busy being robot overlord of the simulation.
What was that weird? I vaguely remember a story because I thought, his girlfriend Grimes, saying like that she was dealing with him while he was like out of his mind on something.
Well, he might have been on, I don't know, stimulants or whatever. I'm not sure, but he famously said like he doesn't really smoke weed. I remember they talked about it on the show.
I think for a guy like that, for high functioning individuals, and I'm not sure if this is the case with him, but certainly for other high functioning individuals that are busy all the time, there has to be some sort of stimulant that you're on, whether it be, caffeine, something stronger.
When they were in late stages of the Model T, he literally slept on the Tesla factory floor and like helped with alterations. That does not come from just like being a normal chill dude with a regular amount of energy. Like,
yeah.
But look, I have hope that he will save the human race somehow, some way.
I maintain that he's just he sent his car up into space. He's probably shot a couple of girlfriends, a couple of kids up. He's ready to leave this planet and start again on Mars. And he's leaving us all as plebs here to die on the burning Earth while he goes off to Mars. I think this whole SpaceX thing has just been an elaborate way of this billionaire leaving the planet.
It's not...
Can you blame him at this point?
Yeah. Not right.
I'd leave if I could. Just take that one rocket ship to Mars, grow poop potatoes like Matt Damon.
I don't know if that would work.
Science.
I think it sounds pretty good at this point.
That's true.
Yes. Speaking of sounding pretty good.
Now that we're ready to walk into the sea. On that note, we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all social media that do or ever will exist at Unnatural Show on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and motherfucking TikTok. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at George Sipos.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heath.
You can follow me on Instagram at AC Doreen.
And you can follow us all to the headquarters of SpaceX, where we'll be one of the throngs of crowds up against the chain link fence, begging to be sent up into the sky as the last shuttle leaves the Earth for good, dooming
George,
us to
social distancing.
Mm.
We can't
Yeah, it's
all
gonna
be
be fun.
squished on the chain fence. That's
We-
bad.
1.5.
We're up against the chain link fence, 1.5 meters apart. Exactly
All
right.
Done. Perfect.
Thanks for listening, guys. We love you, and we'll see you next week.
Maybe we should start our own coup committee. What do you think?
Nah.
Yes.